All right, let's jump right in. You know, tucked away in the Old Testament, there's this short book that a lot of us just kind of skip over. But honestly, it's a literary masterpiece. We're talking about the Book of Joel, and it packs a serious punch. Believe me, it takes this terrifying natural disaster and turns it into this timeless, powerful prophecy.
So, let me ask you something. What could possibly be so terrifying about insects? I mean, for most of us today, it's a nuisance, right? But back in the ancient world, as the prophet Joel lays it all out, a swarm of insects was something else entirely. We're talking apocalyptic.
And just to paint a picture of what we're dealing with here, listen to this account from the 19th century describing a locust plague. It talks about a swarm so huge, so vast, that it literally took 3 or 4 days for the whole thing to pass by. Imagine that, a living, moving carpet of total devastation just marching forward.
And hey, don't think for a second this is just some dusty ancient history. There's this story about a modern locust swarm in Ohio. Yeah, Ohio. That was so thick, their matted wings on the highway made the roads as slick as an ice rink. They had to bring out state trucks to sand the roads in the middle of July. That's the kind of overwhelming, unstoppable force we're talking about here. So how in the world does Joel capture this kind of terror? Well, he doesn't just describe them as a bunch of bugs. No way. He frames the whole thing as an invading army, a powerful nation on the march with, and I quote, the teeth of a lion.
And their path of destruction is just total. They devour every single green leaf, every blade of grass. They strip the bark clean off the fig trees, leaving the branches bone white. And their march is just relentless. They climb over walls, they get into your house. They don't stop for anything, not even a river or a lake.
But the horror doesn't even stop when they've passed by. You see, the sheer number of their dead bodies can poison the land, the water, leading to deadly plagues. I mean, history actually records one instance, back in 1250 BC, where a plague that followed a locust swarm killed an estimated 80,000 people. This was a genuine life-and-death threat.
But here's the thing about Joel. He isn't just a reporter documenting a disaster. He's a master poet. So let's unpack how his literary style so brilliantly captures the panic and the horror of this whole event.
First off, let's talk about the word itself. The root word for locust literally means burner of the land. You know, think of a holocaust, a complete and total burning. That's exactly what these insects do. They can take a lush green landscape and turn it into a brown, scorched wasteland, almost overnight. Now, to really get across this feeling of sudden, total collapse, Joel uses this incredible poetic technique. He starts shortening his sentences, right? Making them really clipped and punchy, almost like a telegraph. This staccato rhythm, it makes you feel the panic, the intensity. Just watch how he does it.
The grain, destroyed. Bam. The very foundation of their food supply, just gone. The new wine, dried up. So with no grapes, there's no wine. Not for celebration, not for religious ceremony.
The oil fails. The very foundation of their whole economy, poof, gone. You see how that rapid-fire delivery just hits you? It's a masterful way to communicate utter and complete devastation.
Okay, so this is the crucial turning point. For Joel, this locust plague, it's not just some random, terrible natural disaster. He sees it as a sign, a warning, a harbinger of something much, much bigger. He calls it the Day of the Lord.
So what exactly is Yom Yahweh, the Day of the Lord? Well, in a nutshell, it's any moment in time when God decides to step in and directly intervene in human history. And usually it's for the purpose of judgment.
And this is where the prophets, guys like Joel, put this huge twist on the whole idea. See, the popular belief back then was, oh, awesome, the Day of the Lord. That's when God's going to judge our enemies and we're going to win. But then prophets like Joel and Amos show up and they're like, whoa, not so fast. They said judgment actually starts with the house of God. This is a day of reckoning for us, too. So you start to see this dual nature of the concept, right? On one hand, the day can be a present historical crisis like this locust plague that serves as a massive wake-up call. But it also points forward to a great and final day of the Lord, an ultimate moment of divine intervention at the very end of the age.
Okay, so if this absolutely terrifying event is a sign of divine judgment, what are you supposed to do about it? What's the right response? Well, Joel is crystal clear, and it's a message that has echoed down through the centuries.
And here it is, probably the most famous line from the entire book. Now back then, tearing your clothes was a common outward sign of grief or repentance. But Joel says God isn't interested in the external show. He wants genuine internal transformation. He says, rend your heart and not your garments.
And this is a point the prophets hammered home again and again. They constantly warned against religious rituals like fasting that were just for show. A way to look super pious while completely ignoring true righteousness. They basically called it a self-righteous parade of religion.
So what does God's version of real repentance, of a real fast, actually look like? Well, the prophet Isaiah gives us a perfect checklist. And guess what? It's not about skipping a meal. It's about social justice. It's about loosening the chains of injustice, feeding the hungry, sheltering the homeless, and clothing the naked. See, true repentance leads to action that actually helps other people.
And that really brings us right to the heart of this entire book. Joel takes this absolutely terrifying locust plague, this burner of the land, and he masterfully transforms it into this profound, timeless message about God's judgment, the call for genuine, heart-deep repentance, and ultimately, the demand for justice.
So that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If a day of the Lord can be both a real-time crisis in history and a sign pointing to something ultimate in the future, how does that change the way we look at the major crises, the locust plagues of our own time? What might they be calling us to see and, more importantly, to do?